Okay, so hi everybody. Welcome to our DRC session on mobile reporting. As always, we'll just wait a few more minutes still until everybody has joined the session. But in the meantime, actually, James, I've got a question for you. Like, can you actually remember the first online report that you worked on that was optimized for mobile phone?
Yeah, I can. I think it was around 2014, maybe 15. It was for a specialty chemical company, one of our clients in the Netherlands. And it was actually the first responsive design that I had ever worked on. And I'm sure the result will look pretty outdated today. And there was really no focus on the actual possibilities of the medium. So really optimizing for touch or really just focusing on the user. But it was a good start.
Okay, so sounds fun. But especially in the sector you're working in, like as an art director, responsive design was like a paradigm shift, was it? Like, has it already become widely accepted, or do you like, I don't know, see a need to catch up, especially in financial reporting?
Yeah, especially in the sector of financial reporting. I think reports in general are kind of tricky because they're not a really typical publication. There's lots of data and lots of special kind of information that's packed into them. They're not really about selling something. It's not a typical website per se. And I think there's lots that financial reports can maybe learn from apps or maybe other just more normal websites. I think there's room to catch up for sure. Just kind of taking the advantages of the format into consideration.
Okay. Yeah, very interesting. Thank you. So, but I think everybody who wants to join has joined now, so we'll just start with our presentation. Just a short reminder to everybody, please mute your microphone and turn off your camera. So once again, I would like to welcome you to our session on mobile reporting. My name is Moritz Rausch. I'm the part of research team at the University of Applied Sciences in St. Pölten, who is a co-organizer of the DRC. Presenting with me is my colleague James, who is an art director at nexxar. I would also like to welcome Catherine. She is part of the communication team of Shell, and Shell has been kind enough to provide us with insights and mobile statistics and data about their mobile usage of their sustainability report in 2019, which we will share with you later on. And we will ask Catherine for her feedback actually at the end of her presentation. Sorry. So, okay, about our agenda. That is what we want to talk about to you in a nutshell. I will start off with covering a few theoretical aspects and explaining the concepts of desktop first, mobile first, and user first to you. Then I will introduce you to the results of the case study I was just talking about, the Shell Sustainability Report 2019. Finally, my colleague James will turn the theory into practice, and he will be going over a few specific mobile reporting aspects from a design and user experience point of view, and show some different approaches. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask us via the chat function. We will cover as many of them in the end of our presentation. Okay, so whenever content is to be distributed to stakeholders, there are a lot of things to decide beforehand before the final product can finally air. And I'm not even talking about the content itself, but how the content will be distributed, and more specifically on which devices. So therefore, we will today focus on the decision whether to use mobile phones or PC desktops as the main distribution channel for corporate reporting, and how can companies adapt their reports for the increasing mobile use, and does it make sense to switch to a mobile-first reporting in the future? So let's start off with some facts. There are approximately 3.5 smartphone users around the world today. More than 50% of website traffic has been generated through mobile phones in 2019, while computers still accounted for about 44%. And users spend more than 3 hours and 23 minutes every day on their mobile phones on average in 2019. According to this, there are hardly any websites left, that includes online reports actually, that don't offer some form of responsive layout. So just to define responsive layout for this session, we will talk about it as a single site built on a versatile layout to be available on various mobile devices and screens and sizes for now. So, or to make it short, one site fits all, if you will. But to make it more complex, programmers and designers came up with 3 different types of responsive layouts: fluid, adaptive, and fixed. While fixed layouts don't scale with the website based on the size of the screens at all, fluid layouts are based on proportionally layering of your website. So elements will take up the same percentage of space on every screen size or type and so on, I think you can imagine. So how can I make sure to distribute my website in the best way possible on any device? You see, when deciding which layout to choose, you have to keep in mind what your main channel will be. Depending on your content and your context, you will have to choose whether you want your consumers, your users, to engage with your website via mobile devices or desktop devices, PC, tablets, or laptops. Therefore, we must distinguish between different approaches before deciding for the layout. And the most common known approach is the desktop-first approach, and the lesser known is the mobile-first approach. And I'll just start off with the desktop-first approach, which is the main and traditional way for designing websites. Basically, the content is designed to look good on the wider and bigger screens of the PCs. Therefore, this approach seeks to design the website for full-size screens, as I just said, and put as much information in it as possible. It's normally used when about 80% of your traffic or hits are coming from desktop devices, or in case if you're selling products, if your sales are significantly higher on desktops. Mobile first, on the other hand, are created to be functional. The design has to fit on a much smaller screen, as you know, and rather than designing a complex and visually enhanced web page, you just start by putting out a core function and layering extras incrementally on top of it. This progress is called progressive enhancement. So therefore, design on mobile phones will be rather simple, minimalistic, and in the best case, functional, if you will. So this approach can be much more expensive than the desktop approach, though, because you need way more expertise and time to set the whole thing up. So you see, when entering a website on a PC, the user expects kind of the whole package. They presumably have time and place to explore and to be engaged with complex designs and animations. Phones are pretty much used differently. Mobile search is fantastic for quick and on-the-spot information references. Like if you have to look up your dentist's phone number or address, for example. So I have a quick question for you. Just think about it. What do you think? How many companies use a desktop-first approach in corporate reporting? To be honest, there is no research to this question, but if you ask us, the percentage of desktop-first reports is around 99.9%. But there are a lot of companies and agencies who claim that their reports are actually mobile-first. And I think James got an example for us there.
Yes, we do. We actually managed to find what's called a best practice example of a mobile-first online report. This is the landing page of the Xero, and as it's a software company which is stock listed. It's the landing page of their report. So we can kind of see on the desktop version, it's a very nice layout. There's large numbers. There's really good typography, and it's inviting. But if we look at the mobile layout, or how it just kind of scales down to the mobile layout, we can see a few problems immediately. We see that these text or this typography hasn't really been adapted to the layout, and also this text to the right of the key figures that we see here is also very small and would not be readable on a mobile device. So actually, this is an example. It looks to us like it was designed desktop first, and it's not really taking advantage or adapting as well as it could be to the mobile layout.
Okay, thank you. But more important than the devices are actually the needs of the users. So this is the idea behind the user-first approach I want to talk about now. So we need to start thinking about a user's context and how to meet their immediate needs on the device or platform that is readily available to them. So let me give you an example. You own a pizza shop, just for example, and you want to create a user-first website. So the first thing you have to think about is where, when, and why will consumers and users approach your website? When entering a website on the mobile device, they just likely need some core information, like where is your restaurant? When are you open? Maybe a phone number or eventually a call to click button. That's it. You don't need more for any mobile devices. Do they have the time to visit your website on a tablet? That's fantastic. You can feel free to add some feel for the ambience, probably a menu or the ability to make a reservation. On desktop, you can provide pictures, bios, blog posts, the most recent event hosted at your location, a statement where your ingredients come from, catering options, etc., etc., etc. I think you get the point. So in the end, deciding which layout you want to choose for your website is based on your approach. Websites have to be built for where user is and for the specific needs at that time. Applying this to digital corporate reports is a bit difficult, but not important. No, not impossible. And we'll give you some examples later on. But before we do that, I would like to have a look on the usage side and the question if reporting needs a mobile approach. And that question can be partly answered based on the mobile user behavior and how do users interact with reports on their mobiles. To answer this question, we conducted a case study on Shell Sustainability Report 2019. And just to start off with a few core facts, the report was published on April 7th, 2020. And although online reports are still mainly used on so-called desktop devices, about 21% of all users accessed the Sustainability Report 2019 via a mobile device during that analyzed time period. On the next page, you will see that we hardly found any differences in the usage of the Sustainability Report at first. So it seemed as if it really didn't matter whether the user accessed the report from a desktop or a mobile device. They visited almost the same pages, very interested in similar topics overall. But we found those results a bit deceptive, to be honest. So, because if you look closer at the data, it reveals what you might have suspected from the beginning. Mobile users use significantly less time to engage with contents. They only spend about 43 seconds on each page. That's roughly half of the time a user would have spent when they access the web page from the desktop devices. They also prefer text and categories that give a quick reference or quick overview of the whole, as you can see in this visualization right here. Texts that fall in the category called introduction tend to be more informative, but not as long as articles in sustainable energy future category, for example. So the results show that mobile users prefer articles which provide them with insights into conception, implementation, and management of sustainable business structures without going into too much detail. And the last finding we had was that mobile users rather get their link to the online report presented in form of a social network post or a similar campaign rather than actively searching for it online. So as we all know, social networks and online campaigns similar to them are naturally more important on mobile phones because about 99% of all users use social media on their phones. And in the contrast, search engines hardly played any role on mobile devices, while they did on desktop devices. So just to wrap it up, does that mean every single company should throw all their previous concepts overboard and create a new mobile-first reporting style from scratch? Of course not. I mean, it's up to each company to decide whether to produce future sustainability or even annual reports according to a mobile-first, a user-first, a desktop-first, or a mixed concept. The best approach is to respond to the own users and take the particular needs into account. The future of website designing, reporting, and the conception of online annual reports, in my opinion, lies in the individually tailored user-first concept. And with that, I would like to pass to James.
Yeah, so thank you, Moritz, for the theoretical input and all the statistics you looked up for the Shell sustainability report. Now we're just going to take a look at some 3 key areas that kind of need a more thinking required when we want to just kind of focus on a more mobile approach. The first being the landing page of reports and just kind of optimizing the user experience for this handheld device. So let's take another look at the Shell sustainability report, the landing page. The main stage is pretty standard. We have the slogan, we have the title and the introductory text. Beneath that, we have the a teaser to the letter from the CEO, and underneath that, some also image teasers to featured content. So it's just a pretty basic structure. And underneath this, in the desktop version, there is a tool provided for the user, which basically allows them to select topics of interest from this colorful wheel here. And once they choose those, they have underneath that the outcome basically of what topics they've chosen, and they can dive directly into very detailed content inside the report. It's a pretty interesting approach. It requires, from my point of view, a lot of thinking and activity from the user. I think it's very suited for desktop. We'll see how this kind of translates next in the mobile version. So up top, basically the landing page stays the same. And underneath that, instead of having the teasers directly, we have the topic selection placed directly before the hero stage, so to speak. And instead of using this kind of wheel shape to allow the user to choose the topics, it's just been translated into buttons, color-coded buttons. So the user can, for example, click on performance data or social performance and then get the results based on the content in the report and navigate directly into them. It's a good approach to kind of translate the same solution to a mobile format and getting rid of the wheel. But it also, from my point of view, still requires a lot of time from the user, a lot of thinking about what he's actually looking for. So what we've done is we've come up with 3 different approaches for the landing page that kind of take the handheld device more into view, just kind of think about them more. And we'll go through those 3 now. And Catherine, I guess you're seeing them for the first time. So if you have any feedback or if you have a preference, you can let us know at the end of the presentation and maybe we can talk about it. So the first new approach that we came up with is kind of just to place search at the very focus of the user experience. So when the user comes to the landing page, he's just asked, what can we help you find in the report? He types in what he's looking for. And underneath, he gets a list of search results, which are organized in a very hierarchical manner. He has image teasers, and also below that, more dry content teasers for more specific content. And one idea we had is if the user stays on this page too long, or if he scrolls down too far, this white section would pop up, just kind of move everything up, and he would get alternative search ideas presented to him, just kind of helping the user out so he doesn't have to know exactly what he's looking for. He can just kind of lead him and guide them into the report in a more natural way. Yeah, so the second concept we came up with, which is more maybe more mobile first, is to just provide really simple and reduced entry ports to the mobile user. So the idea here is to basically just add more visual appeal, add more hierarchy, and make the whole experience a bit more app-like. So we see here we have the title, we have a background image which is visually appealing, and underneath that we have the top sustainability topics. And this kind of function is something that the user has learned from maybe using apps, where he can just kind of swipe through left and right through the topics. And here also providing the same functionality with other key figure teasers. And the idea here is just kind of reduce the amount that's on the landing page and just present it in a more appealing and mobile friendly manner to the user. And the third and final approach, the alternative idea we had for the landing page, was to kind of really make something that's a bit more app-like and a bit more engaging for the user. So the idea here is to basically create interest profiles for each user based on a very brief and short questionnaire. So the user is presented with a splash screen with a message just saying, okay, in order to create the best user experience, please answer the following questions. The first question being, what category best describes you? He can choose from a very short list. For example, say, okay, I'm a journalist. Coming on to the next question, and then based on what interest user profile I chose beforehand, I get 3 topics, and I can kind of just rate my interest in these 3 topics with some very simple sliders, rate them from 0 to 10, so to speak. And the final question being, which of the following areas interest you the most? Just choose up to 3 from these 6 topics. And after the user has kind of gone through this very quick process, he gets personalized results with just teasers into very specific content in the report, but based on his decisions prior. So the idea here basically for this concept is just focusing more on the user, trying to just get more information from the user and providing them with the content that they actually might be interested in. So another topic which is very specific to, or very, I would say, challenging for mobile devices or tables, which are basically just the data heart of reports, because all reports contain a large number of tables and a very diverse types. So I would say the main challenges of tables are definitely the diversity of the table types. You have some with 2 columns, you have some with 20 columns, so there are small tables and large tables. And also that the complexity and detail of the large tables is a very difficult challenge. And so the main challenge we have in this area is just the size constraint, basically, of the mobile format, where we don't have the width, we don't have the screen real estate that we have on desktop devices. So here we see a really simple example of a large table from the Adidas annual report on a desktop device, and we can already just kind of imagine how that's going to be challenging when translating it to the really small mobile size. So I'll briefly go through 3 kind of just strategies that are possible when dealing with tables in the mobile arena, so to speak. One simple solution is just to make the main column, so the descriptor column of the tables, sticky. So when the user is scrolling left and right, this always stays in place so that he never loses his reference point. In some online reports, this isn't the case, and you can imagine if you're just scrolling left and right through tables, you just see numbers at some point. You don't really know what these numbers are unless you've remembered beforehand, memorized the column, the descriptor column. So this is a really simple strategy, is just to kind of help the user out with this, keeping this relationship in mind. Another strategy we could imagine was just offering offering detailed and compact views of tables. Basically, just going from the mindset that the mobile user is just interested in very quick information. He's more interested in the compact view, and so this compact view would actually just provide the sums of the items in the table. And if he's more interested in more detailed information, he can click the detailed button. The table opens up, and we can just see the remaining table entries. So this is just something that just adds another kind of more touch solution with a button, and the user can decide what he's interested in, but presenting him in the natural state, in the first state, with the more compact information. The final strategy or new solution we could think about with tables is just to basically think of them less as tables, think of them less as something that's more landscape, and just kind of rearranging and reorganizing the content so that it really suits the handheld device. And this idea could be based on just a very simple card view, where the descriptor columns are just kind of broken down into, they're just visually placed on cards, and we have the years underneath. This is a solution, in my point of view, that I can imagine seeing coming in a few years. I've seen it on a few non-reporting websites where tables have been translated in this manner. And for me, it just really helps the handheld user out, because he doesn't have to scroll left and right, which is a very unnatural movement when you're just trying to deal with lots of data. So the idea here is to just really help out the mobile user, where you can just scroll up and down. And we also have a way to compress information here by adding basically an accordion function to the descriptor column, where the items can be opened or closed, and the user just really has control to see what he's interested in. So as we just saw, there's really a few ways that we can improve mobile tables. There's still always going to be a challenge in my point of view, just because of the nature of tabular data. And there's definitely no one-size-fits-all solution. The solution I showed beforehand probably wouldn't work for very large tables, but it's something that we could see in the future, maybe for shorter tables, or maybe it requires more testing. I'm not sure. So another item or another topic that's requires lots more thinking in the mobile first arena is interactive graphics. I'll go briefly through some advantages of interactivity. It can really help explain complex processes and content. They can create and visualize certain levels of information. And what they really do is just initiate user engagement. So I'll briefly show two examples of these. This is the business model of BSF. So business model is something that's basically just a key item in many online annual reports or integrated reports or sustainability reports. So that's something we're confronted with very often, and often the solutions have been kind of conceived in a more landscape or double PDF page manner. So basically this business model is set up to show us three areas. We have the input here. We have the business model as what BSF actually does, and the output. And so for the desktop solution, it's very clear that the user can just open these. I'll play the video again. Open these areas, so to speak, and just directly navigate into the specific content of the report. And for the mobile solution, it works basically the same way. Oops, sorry. But we're not able to use the wide format of the screen once again. So we provide the user just with one section at a time. So the user can click on input. Sorry. Here, click on input, and then choose from this kind of drop-down list or these accordion what section he's interested in, and also can navigate through this little head section between input, business model, and output. So here the translation has worked really well, even though we were presented with a solution at the beginning which required a lot of horizontal space. We've managed to make this still user-friendly and functional for the handheld user. So this is another business model. This is for the Munich airport. A bit of a different type of layout. They have a more circular approach, and they have the navigational aspect is focused on these key, what they call the capital types. So you see here in the video, the user can navigate this business model, make a decision, okay, what capital type am I interested in? And then I can, in this area, just kind of turn information off and on and see how the business model is working in regards to this certain capital type. Here, the mobile solution is pretty interesting because we obviously can't use this wide circle approach because it requires lots of space. What we've done here is leave the navigational approach on the forms of capital. just made them simple buttons. The user has the ability to just choose the form of capital and scroll down in a more linear fashion between the input and the business, so to speak, and then the output. Everything here has been optimized for touch devices, and it's, in my point of view, a pretty good translation of the desktop version. So what can we take away from this? When concepting or conceiving more interactive solutions, it's always important to think of both solutions from the get-go. So we have to think, okay, how is this going to function on a handheld device, and what can we offer maybe on a desktop device that's important for the more informed user, perhaps. The end solution will always be better if we kind of conceive of both formats in tandem, in parallel.
Okay.
Yeah.
So thank you, everybody. We are now going to start our discussion. If you have any questions still open, just feel free to ask them. We will start off the discussion with a few questions for Catherine. So Catherine, what is your opinion? What do the results of the case study imply to you?
Yeah, so thank you. As you said, I've seen most of this presentation new today, so it's super interesting to see both the study work that you've done and the ideas that you've come up with. I think for me, perhaps, some of the big takeaways that I suppose, maybe we already know it, is that, online viewers we know already have quite a short attention span, but when you're looking at mobile and cutting that attention span in half to, I think you said, was it 43 seconds or something? It means we really need to grab their attention if we want to keep them and to get our core messages across. So that, thinking about it, that does really demonstrate the importance of making sure that you get the design that works and that will bring them in. And making sure that the information is readily available, they can see it straight away. Yeah, super interesting. I think as well, there were a few ideas that came up yesterday in one of the sessions as well that I think you can see the application potentially between some of those ideas and things that you've presented here today as well. Yeah, very interesting.
Okay, just another question to follow up. Is Shell thinking about the radical shift to mobile-first reporting?
I think we'd probably all agree that the time of print has gone, and looking to the future, it's definitely online first. We still do see good use of our PDF, but the amount of users using the report online is much higher. So we already recognize online first is the way to go. Mobile first, I think, would be quite a radical shift. So I think the opportunity really is in trying to make sure that what you're doing for your online viewers is also good for mobile. So it's perhaps online first with mobile in mind, and making sure, that the graphics and perhaps things, like our nice interactive index on the front now, that we can make that so that it also works for mobile. But yeah, I think for us, online is still probably the main focus, with mobile definitely in mind.
Okay, thank you for these insights. We'll now go to the Q&A section of Teams. Once again, if there are still open questions, we are happy to answer them if we have time for them. And we'll just start off with a question for James. Why are the mobile usage numbers for online reports lower than for other websites?
Yeah, I would just assume that it's because the content is so special. It's just a very niche kind of publication. That would be my answer.
Okay, that was pretty fast. Okay, then let's just go on with the next one. I think that's one for me. Could it be that the findings you found out comes from the fact that younger people use the internet more on mobile devices, and that they are the users we can see in the statistics there? Basically, yeah, it could be, but we don't got any demographic statistics from the sustainability report, sadly. So since, in my opinion, young people like I am are stakeholders of the future, you can just go along with these like results anyway. So it could be, but we don't know for sure. And the second part, because all of the topics you found that the mobile users are interested in seem to be like to be topics that younger people would be interested in. Yeah, of course they are, but I think they're very important topics, and not only younger people will be interested in them, especially since the trend is going into a sustainable future. The next one is for you again, James. With the profile approach, you know, like the user profile approach, won't you risk losing the visitor to explore or discover other parts of the report?
Yeah, I think that could definitely be a risk. It's a good point. One solution could possibly be to just offer a way to skip the questionnaire. I say you can't really just. It's hard to make a solution that's good for everybody. We've kind of built in an idea to kind of just handle this already, in the idea where the user can skip questions. So underneath here, and just be provided with maybe predetermined results. But yeah, maybe you could add into this idea just the possibility to skip the questionnaire or to navigate a more standard or more more standard landing page.
Okay. And the last question we got so far: do all these examples of tables and interactive graphics work in both portrait and landscape formats, or is it better to focus on only one format for mobile?
Yeah, so certain solutions definitely work for landscape and portrait formats. So this sticky descriptor column works on all sizes. I would just kind of make that breakpoint based or viewport based. So as soon as the screen becomes too small to display the whole table, this column is always fixed and sticky. This solution here would also be something I would consider actually building into the desktop version of tables. I've seen it on this report, for example, the Micros annual report. I think it just really helps the user to it just helps compress information, and it doesn't really overwhelm the user. So if you have a really large table with a lot of rows and cells, it could be really helpful just to provide this also on the desktop version. This solution with the card view, I would only really consider for smartphone formats. This is something that just requires where horizontal scrolling isn't really standard. So something more like a smartphone where you're just navigating or using your thumb, using just more of a touch usability. Yeah.
I think for us, it looks quite interesting, the idea around that sticky main column, because I think that's quite useful anyway when you have a large table. You know, we've got 10 years of data. And the idea of the expandable tables, again, I think that's super interesting, because as we add more and more data to the tables, and there is a demand for more and more data, it does make them very complex. And so I actually think that's really interesting to have a way that you can just have the headline data if that's what you're interested in, and expand it if you're an analyst who wants to get into all of the detail. That's interesting. Yeah.
And that would basically be a function you could just kind of determine, or on a table by table basis, okay, where do I need this function and where not? And it could just be applied to large tables or certain tables in the report.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, that's pretty interesting. So I think we haven't got any questions left. Did I look over one? No, I think that's it. So if there are no questions left, we've got a few minutes, but I would like to thank James and Catherine for presenting with me and letting me present actually. And yeah, do you have something to say?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you both.
Indeed, I would say thank you as well. Super interesting ideas and research that you've done there. If I was to have one more reflection, I would say, for me, I think the ideas around the increased use of visuals for mobile and more engaging imagery, something that we've been talking about separately this week as well. So it was interesting to see it on your presentation, and I can see how that might help with, I think it was scrolly telling was the new word that I learned yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to help show people what we're doing in a more engaging way. Yeah, if we put together a lot of information, we spend hours and hours and hours, days, months, compiling all of the information. But if nobody looks at it, then it loses its value. So the more engaging we can make the report, both for online, for mobile users as well, I think it's really important. So thank you.
Okay, since there is no other question, I think we'll end it here. Thank you for listening to us and discussing with us. And the next part will be wire on fire reporting matters, board communication.
Yeah.
So thank you, and hopefully next year we'll see each other in person.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Bye.